Sunday nights belong to us, and it's a weekend of highlights. Depends on what you like and what you are interested in. Evangelos Marinakis, he's been my spotlight of the weekend. Owner of Nottingham Forest. He did something extraordinary, coming down onto the pitch, expressing frustration over a result. They've said it wasn't because of that and all of that, but it gives you an idea of where things are going as far as the battle or the race for Europe is concerned. El Clasico happened again today. I'm not even sure if the Real Madrid people care at this point because they've lost every Clasico this season. Every single Clasico this season has been lost to Barcelona, either from a winning position or from a losing position from the get-go. There's the NBA playoffs happening. We'll talk about that. There's also Ghana's under-20 team participating in the under-20 AFCON. We have a date with the home side, Egypt. So there's a lot to chew on as far as the show is concerned. We'll talk some MTN FA Cup as well. Let's do a quick turnaround. When we come back, I'll introduce my two good friends in the studio, and then we'll get talking. Welcome back to Scorecard here on Channel 1 TV. Susu Graham, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Welcome in Edwin Kwakofi back.
It's good to be back.
Yeah, nice. We haven't seen you in a minute.
Yeah, I've been observing things from afar, learning from my colleagues, so it's good to be back.
We've been hearing you on radio, though. You've been doing your things on radio, so there's that as well. Yeah. But let's dive into it, right? So let's check out what people have been up to during this weekend. Why do you have this suspicious smile on your face?
I'm just happy to be here. I love to be here, so why that's why I'm smiling. There's nothing has happened that I can't think about. Maybe some people were insulting me. Maybe they won't insult me as much this weekend. Maybe I don't know.
They've been on your back for a minute.
I don't know. Maybe.
But what's been going on this weekend? What have you had your eyes on?
Oh, it's been a restful weekend. I've just been observing the Premier League games, the fight for the top 5 now spots.
Yep.
Because that's the most interesting part of the season at the moment. Yeah. The title is done, relegation done. That's all we have to look forward to.
Even Southampton have managed to get more than 11 points. That's another thing that there's nothing like. We're watching that to see whether they will get more than 11. Now they've gotten it.
That was a huge shocker for me this weekend, and that shocker sent a lot of slips into hell. Shout out to SoccerBet, they are sponsors of the show. So just to mention.
No, next week you win your money back. That
was crazy. Manchester City, nobody expected. Anyway, let's dive right into it, and let's start off with some under-20 AFCON action because we have a game against Egypt tomorrow. It's the quarter-final stage. Remember, the Black Satellites won their group with 7 points, drew the first game, won the other 2 against Senegal. So it was drew against the DRC, beat Senegal and then the Central African Republic. 7 points to finish the group on top. Senegal finished second in that group. Tomorrow, there's a game against Egypt. Let's hear from the head coach, Desmond Affair, and then we'll come back in studio and we'll talk about the game, our advantages, and what we need to do right. So Desmond Affair is head coach of Ghana's under-20 team. He says they need to stay true to their DNA and their philosophy. It's a big game. Host nation, that is as tricky as it gets. 3 p.m.
It almost feels like we're being punished for topping our group to get Egypt in the next round. Yep. It just brings a lot more expectation because when you see the games that Ghana has played, there's not been a large crowds, but you expect that once Egypt gets involved, a crowd will appear. They'll be there to support their country. And let's be honest, we know football. Referees can get intimidated by crowds. Crowds can make a difference. And we can't go and say, even if the referee does his best, there's the psychology of the crowd, pushing you to make certain decisions you might not want to make. So it's really everything against us in that game. But looking at where we are, the fact that we've done so well in our group, the fact that we beat Senegal, who we were talking about as the best team going into the tournament, I think we have nothing to fear. I think this is an Egypt team we can beat if we play the good games we've been playing.
In fact, Egypt were in Group A. They qualified as part of the best third-place teams.
There you go.
So they were in a Group A that had South Africa, Sierra Leone.
That's the 5-team group.
Good. So South Africa, Sierra Leone, Egypt, Zambia, and Tanzania. They finished with 7 points actually. So they weren't bad. Everybody, the top three in that group all finished with 7 points, and then 4th place Tanzania finished with 6 points. No, Zambia finished with 6, and then Tanzania finished with no points at all. They scored 3 goals and conceded 4.
Yeah,
so that's the record.
So they won 2, drew 1, and lost 1.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, they are not a bad team. We have the same record, but we haven't lost same number of points, but we haven't lost a game. Maybe what I feel might be a disadvantage is the fact that they've played more games. They might have a bit more chemistry. They might have a bit more feel of where they need to improve, where they've gone wrong. Because you can learn something from a defeat.
Yeah.
We've not lost a game. So what have we learned from the rest of our games? You know? So I think it's be a difficult game, but I think, look, we have all the chance in the world because you don't get 7 points by chance. I feel there's enough to see that there's something brewing there. Desmond Ofer has an idea of what he wants to do. So I'm excited to see what these boys can do. And look, they win this game, that's a place in the next World Cup. So
that's what's at stake. And the host nation will have that in perspective even more clearly than us. Edwin, how do we navigate a complicated game like this?
Look, I completely agree with Susu. It's going to be a very difficult game. Egypt historically have been very difficult to play against, and when they are the host nation, it becomes extra difficult. However, you go through the games that Egypt have played so far this campaign, and they've not been very good. But where they lack technique-wise, they make up for in physicality, in efficiency, and in defensive solidity. You mentioned they've conceded 4 goals.
They scored 3.
They've scored 3 and conceded 4. All those 4 were conceded against Sierra Leone in one game. In the other games, they haven't conceded. Very defensively solid. And in those games as well, they give up possession. They don't care about possession. Allow the opposition to play all the football, allow them to create all the chances. But the few that they get, they take advantage of very, very easily. So that is where they are a dangerous prospect. And you look at Desmond Ofer's team, I like the fact that he considers this a final because they need to be at their best to go against this Egyptian side. Where they have an advantage is that they match Egypt in terms of physicality. In every single game they've played, they have conceded more fouls than the other team, which means they go into these 50-50 challenges quite a bit. They go being very physical, challenging their opponents. So the foul count has been racking up. In terms of possession, they dominate all the games, but we know Egypt like that. They prefer to give up possession. But in terms of efficiency, that is where the Black Stars can get Egypt as well. Every single game, the Black Stars have been very efficient with their shooting and goal scoring, except the last one against Cape Verde, where they were shooting for fun. They shot 20 times, only 4 of them were on target. And we can't have that against Egypt. You need to be at your best in front of goal. You can't be firing shots from every single range and expect it to go in. So I expect Desmond Ofer to be speaking to his players. Try and create high percentage shots. If your teammate is in a better position, find them. If you know you can't take a shot from this particular angle, don't force it. And he needs to make that point clear to every single one of those attackers, because in the previous game they were wild with their shooting from every single range, even when a shot wasn't on. So that needs to change. But I like the mentality he's going into this game with, and I hope that the players are also on that same wavelength as him, because this is a very important game. The World Cup.
This is why we are we are this tournament because of this game.
Yes, exactly.
This is the game.
Exactly. So it's important for them to be focused ahead of this game. Otherwise, Egypt will definitely be on form and take this.
One thing I can tell you is that the Egyptians are never really confident about their age-restricted national teams. Their powerhouses have always been their main national teams. I remember when Ghana won the Under-20 World Cup, I think they hosted that World Cup. They were knocked out, I don't remember which stage, but they were knocked out of that particular competition. And there was a lot of uproar about how their clubs do well, national teams do well, and there's just a disconnect with their age-restricted national team. So we might just have a look in because, hey,
I think it's a bad sign that they're already playing defensive.
At that level.
I think you play defensive at a senior level when there's more experience and more. You should be trying to get people, you should be trying to teach players how to play at this level.
And that's what Edwin was pointing out. What they lack in technique, they try to make up for in physicality. So hopefully, I'm sure they are hoping their physicality will get them over the line.
In youth football, you don't need, once you are trying to do this kind of, I don't use the word cynical. I think cynical is harsh, but when you are this You have to be pragmatic to a certain extent, but when your whole philosophy is based on pragmatism at age level,
you know there's a problem.
It's not a good sign. And in fact, Germany, that's why Germany had issues. They said at youth level, we don't win anything, but in the Euros and the World Cup, we always perform. Why is there the disconnect? It's because their pragmatism started too early.
Yeah.
Pragmatism is for senior football. Youth football, you're supposed to learn how to
play free and be expressive. Well, that's the lowdown. 3 p.m. Ghana time. We'll be cheering the Black Satellites on, so hopefully they can get that win and then book a semi-final place, which will also qualify them to the Under-20 World Cup. Let's move it on and talk about the MTN FA Cup. The semis happened over this weekend in Takwa. So we had the first game, which was on Saturday, between Golden Kicks and Atram Divisia. Golden Kicks completely took Atram Divisia to the cleaners in that game. 4-1 is how that game ended. And then Kumasi Asante Kotoko took on Brekum Chelsea. It ended 1-0 in favor of Kumasi Asante Kotoko. Let me start with you this time, Edwin. So Kotoko Fire, Nate Ogum managed to still get a win in a game I thought was extremely tricky, but they're in the final now and they have a date with Golden Kicks. That's going to be a very tricky final for them.
It is going to be tricky, but I felt that the Kotoko Foundation was built with Nati Ogum. I think throughout the FA Cup, whatever their league form may have been, in the FA Cup, they were up for it and they were performing quite creditably in every single game they played. Against Brecum Chelsea, it took a while for them to get that goal, but once they did, they were able to hold on for the win. In the final against Golden Kick, obviously, Kotoko will be favourites for that game, and Golden Kick will see themselves as a team that has done pretty well themselves to get to this stage. They and Atram Division, obviously, they are in the Division 1
Nothing more dangerous than a lower division team that gets to a cup final.
They are in the Division 1 league. Atram Division, I think, are 8th. Golden Kick are 11th. So these are not teams that are blowing other teams away in the Division 1 league. These are teams that are pretty comfortably mid-table.
Yeah.
So this is the way they...
It's a big deal for them.
Yeah, this is the way they showcase themselves to the rest of the country. That they are a force to be reckoned with. So having gone through all the rounds to get to the final and facing one of the biggest clubs in Ghana, I think they are a more dangerous prospect for Kumasi Asante Kotoko.
And I like that you mentioned that fact, because you win the FA Cup, you get into Africa.
Exactly.
So, and these clubs, their model is basically to sell players. Like, they have one or two gems they want to sell.
I have a big issue with that, in the sense that if Golden Kicks were the ones who get to Africa, would they be interested or have the resources to be able to finance?
That is a whole other story.
Because our teams, let's be honest, there's not much money even in the Ghana Premier League. Talk much of the Division 1 league.
What will happen is that they will scrap for like the barest minimum, so they will barely be able to get tickets for their staff and personnel. They will squeeze in as little staff and technical personnel as they can for these games. Also, they can showcase players to the continent so they can make some profit. So it's a very...
Honestly, we all have an underdog story, but I feel like Kotoko will at least take it seriously.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how seriously or even how capable
they are
Kicks of doing. Don't get me wrong.
You need a lot of fans for Africa.
They are there on merits. Yeah. If they win it, they win it. They deserve to win it. But I'm just a bit worried about whether they'll be able to actually manage the African.
I'm sure
that's fine, but right now they don't care.
I'm sure they don't care about those
things.
They
don't care about that.
They're not even thinking that far into the
They are not. I am thinking that far ahead. That's why I'm because look, we've spoken a lot about how Ghanaian teams have not really made a dent in Africa, how they've not managed to do that. And to be fair, even Kotoko, considering the way they are behaving, would they even be able to take advantage of the opportunity to do anything? So for me, I think it's just this final. When I think about the long-term consequences, it's a bit disheartening in some ways, because you look at Kotoko on one side, who have the funds to handle an African campaign, but they are so confused, they are going to mess it up. Then you have Golden Kicks on the other side, who, considering how they are overachieving, their chance to play in Africa for them would be great. It would be amazing. But do they have the funds to do it? I'm not even talking about how seriously they will take it, because even the funds...
You need close to $500,000
and even to go what I'm thinking about, even the funds, for all you know, because they don't have the funds, they won't take it seriously because we can't afford it. It's going to cost too much and that kind of stuff, which is kind of sad.
In fact, most often than not, when Ghanaian teams who are not called Hearts of Folk and Kotoko have gone to Africa, after the campaign has ended, they've ended up in tons of debts, like debts that keeps you reeling for years. Dreams FC have the benefit of being the team of the FA president, so I'm sure they have like access to some decent funding. But in the past, teams that have gone to Africa, it's not really ended well for them. So let's see how all of that plays out.
It's just a bit disheartening because, no disrespect to them, but a Division 1 team, those funds will be difficult to come by. But I still want to. I would hope they would win for their fairy tale. But in terms of the African campaign, I'm looking at Kotoko. So I'm very split. But look, at the end of the day, it's not about who is better for Africa. It's about who is better on the pitch. So let's see how it goes.
It's what it is. Let's transition to the European game. Let's go to England, where the race for Europe has taken center stage. The title is already decided. Relegation places decided. So the 5 slots up for the Champions League, the 1 slot for the Europa League and the Conference League have become the poll attention seekers. So now, and it's been even more complicated by the fact that Spurs and United are in the Cup final, and then Crystal Palace have an FA Cup final. All those things snowball into who gets to go to Europe. But Manchester City complicated their story just a little bit this weekend with a game everybody thought was going to be a walk in the park against Southampton. It was goalless. Let's get the highlights. Mix of hard luck and not so precise finishing, ensuring that Manchester City's own fate in Europe is undecided. So, very interesting game. Edwin, let me start off with you. Drew, this game just complicated their story, but also touch on Phil Foden for me. We're just talking about that off air. How does an MVP fall off this bad? I've heard excuses made for him, I mean, when the season started, but now the season has ended and we still didn't see anything.
You're right. He's had a pretty poor season. That's mainly because of the increased expectations after last season. Everyone thought he'd go another level, but then the whole team dipped. Key players got injured at very bad moments, and everyone started looking at him. It can go 2 ways. Either you step up big time and become a big player, or it gets to you, the pressure gets to you, and then you fall off. And I think that's what happened to Phil Foden. He couldn't handle the pressure. I think he's still a young player who needs other performers around him before he himself can get up to his game.
He's not in the mode to carry a team.
He's not a team carrier at the moment. He might get there eventually, but at the moment he's not. So, and it's not been good for Man City as a result. In this game, Southampton were very masterful defensively. They were joking at the end of the game that they prevented Man City from scoring, and everyone was saying they didn't even play. They didn't even try and play the football. But if you're a team like Southampton, you've been relegated already. You are coming up against the team that was champions before, a team that is in form. Exactly. You're trying to make sure you don't finish on 11 points. You are not going to face them toe for toe. You are going to play to your strengths. And in this game, their strength was defending very deeply.
They seemed very, like they were enjoying themselves in this game. That's what I noticed.
They were. And they made things difficult for Man City. So, and they got the point that they wanted. It might not affect them in the larger sense in terms of keeping them in the Premier League, but it makes them feel good going into next season.
I think it's a big deal for Southampton because you don't want to be that team
exactly
just as bad as Derby County. I think it's a big deal.
Huge deal.
I think in the sense that in 50 years,
you
don't want to be the one that they're talking about. You are the 2 worst teams. At least in 50 years, everyone will still be talking about that.
And it matters for legacy. Who was in charge as the manager? Who were the players who, picked up this awful record for the club? That type of thing. But I mean, does this complicate their story for you? Are you thinking that they might come back to regret this result?
I believe. Let me
because the table is dicey.
But the way I see it, Nottingham Forest dropping points is a godsend. Seriously, Nottingham Forest dropping points helps them. Between Newcastle and Chelsea, knowing that those two have played, Newcastle won. That helps them. Nottingham Forest will face Chelsea on their last day. I'm looking at it right now. I believe, yes, it's made their story a bit more complicated, but considering everything that still has to happen.
This result for them meant that Newcastle knocked them off. They were third before this game. Newcastle are now third, 1 point ahead of Manchester City.
If you look at the games that everyone has left,
Yeah.
they are basically playing each other in that block.
But City are not involved
Exactly,
in that.
City are
Neither
not
are
involved
Villa.
in that, and that's why I feel they have an advantage. They and Arsenal have an
So
advantage.
City have
over
Bournemouth,
and
City have Bournemouth and Fulham to finish the season.
Villa still have to play United and Spurs, I believe, to end the season. But Spurs and United are, yes, they are looking at the Europa League.
You see,
They are
if it
not
was
going to be.
Spurs and United in theory and what we expect of them,
Exactly.
yeah, but Spurs and United this season, like 6 points. Like, let's be real.
Spurs have beaten United in every encounter this season, actually.
Spurs have beaten United. United have not beaten Spurs since 2022. But
That's crazy.
let me just talk a little bit about this game. City just didn't create high quality chances.
Yep.
They took like 26 shots and had an XG of 1.8. I know when you put it together, 1.8 sounds like, oh, you should have scored 2 goals. But when you take 26 shots to get that
That's
XG,
a lot.
it means that the chances, the quality of their chances were not high. They didn't create a single big chance or clear-cut chance, whatever adjective you want to use to describe it in the game per their stats. So it looks like even though there was a lot of shots, they weren't very meaningful shots. They weren't shots that on the day you should score. Because if you want to do the math, that's about less than 0.1 xg per shot. That is not very good. When you see those type of numbers, those are the type of numbers of an attack that's going to struggle. Because what you want is to be getting 0.15, 0.2 xg per shot. Because not every shot is created equal, but when the average is that high, it means that there's quality chances interspersed with the low quality chances. But in that, when you see it like that, it means that there were very few high quality chances. Again, no big chances created, and a lot of low quality chances. So, I mean, it's kind of surprising they didn't score, but at the same time, when you deep digger in the numbers, you know, it's very poor. So for me, that was very disappointing.
Manchester City disappointing. Hopefully, this result doesn't come back to bite them, because this was a win on the card. It had been ticked as green. They were supposed to walk away with all 3 points. It didn't happen. Let's get to another team chasing European football, and that's Aston Villa. They had a difficult assignment over the weekend. AFC Bournemouth were hosting them at the Vitality. Villa went there and picked up an all-important win. 3 points in the bag. Just striker's goal, like just a little touch, and it was enough to guide the ball, and it was enough to give them all 3 points. Let me start with you, Susu, on this one. How much do you trust Villa to be able to pick up one of these slots based on fixtures left, form of players, manager's reputation?
I believe they'll win the rest of their games. I look at 6 points from the rest of the games. The issue is that it's not all in their hands. But what works for them is that Newcastle are playing Arsenal.
Yeah.
Chelsea are playing City. No, Chelsea are playing Nottingham Forest. Sorry.
Yeah.
So that alone eliminates some of the uncertainty of the teams, because it looks like some teams above them will drop points.
Yep.
So that puts them in a good position. But will it be enough? That's the question. Because you have to make sure. And even though I see them winning all those games, the fact that there's other teams involved, if Arsenal just win one game against Arsenal or Southampton the last day, Arsenal can even lose to Newcastle, beat Southampton, still get the slot. Newcastle, by virtue of winning, will pass them, I think, mathematically. So you have to
Villa can finish with 69 points.
69.
Yeah.
And how many are on Newcastle on right now?
Newcastle are on 66.
Yes. So again, then goal difference also come into it, because I think Villa's goal difference is very poor, because the beginning of the season they conceded a lot of goals. So they have a very poor goal difference, which you can almost say is minus
As
1
of
point.
now, they have the worst goal difference among the teams that are
Exactly.
competing.
So you can almost say that's minus 1 point, considering how bad the goal difference is, because it looks like you have to do a lot to overcome it, because at a point they're even in the minus. So what's their goal difference now? Could you just...
I think what we have here...
I don't think it will be more than 10. I'll be surprised if it's more than 10.
So 56-49.
So that's what, 7. Exactly.
Yeah.
I didn't expect it to be more than 10. That alone plus 7, and you are saying you want to play in the Champions League. That's not very convincing.
But you should give them some credit. They had the pressure of making deep inroads into the Champions League
And
still
the FA Cup.
competing in the FA Cup and still managing to compete at this level.
I'm giving them credit. Don't worry, their season has been a good season by their standards. If they don't make it to the Champions League, I'm not going to sit here and say sack Unai Emery or anything.
I think they'll feel the financial pinch.
They'll feel the financial pinch. But like I said, I'm not coming to sit here and say sack Unai Emery if he doesn't make it. I just feel that they let themselves down with some of the matches earlier in the season, the goals they conceded. And that's what has put them in this difficult situation. Because plus 7, I'm sure most of the other teams are in their teens, if not their 20s, when it comes to their goal difference. So that alone means that finishing level on points. Imagine if a lot of teams finish on, you are finished joint, you finish fifth.
Yeah.
You finish fifth, joint fifth with someone with 69, but your goal difference will cost you in the end.
Yep.
That is what I think is Villa's biggest killer right now. I don't think their results will not go their way. I think results-wise, they'll be able to do what they need to do, but the goal difference.
They need to keep an eye on Chelsea and Forest especially. That's where their advantage lies. They need, because
and Newcastle and Arsenal.
Currently, they are locked on points with Forest. So 63 with Chelsea. 63, and then Forest are a point below them. So it's very interesting.
Exactly.
Very interesting.
It's just a very difficult one, but they are lucky that because Chelsea and Forest will play, that alone will, kind of give them some leeway. And then Newcastle and Arsenal also played. But looking at the way the things are set up, let's say Newcastle and Arsenal draw.
Yeah.
That means I think Arsenal will have how many points?
69.
Arsenal, they won't overtake them in goal difference.
Yeah.
That 1 point, they won't overtake them in goal difference. Newcastle, so if Newcastle gets 69, they won't overtake them in goal difference. So that's where I feel like they have a slight disadvantage. It could just be the mathematics of it all for me.
Let Edwin finish this up. Can they do this? Unai Emery's had. I think it will be a painful season if they miss out on the Champions League.
It will be a painful season if they miss out on the Champions League, especially considering the players they brought in and how well they've done. You would have felt that those players would be the final pieces they needed to go above that level. But it seems, as Susu said, the goals they've conceded are haunting them. But I think with the games they have left, United and Spurs, both of whom, their attention will be on the Europa League final. Especially after United, I think they lost €11 over the weekend through injury. They don't want any more setbacks. They don't want any more surprises. So we'll see a lot of their key players being rested. Even Kulusevski for Spurs also got injured in this weekend. So
he's not been playing that well.
But he's still a good option to have in your team. He's a huge player. So I think if you're looking at the final games, Aston Villa will definitely win those two games, and they will make it through because Nottingham Forest and Chelsea are not in the best of form.
We all said Forest are going to win this game against Leicester.
Exactly. They are not in the best of form. They face each other on the last day. Chelsea face United next week at Stamford Bridge.
Just before the Europa League final.
Exactly. And Chelsea United games, even with other circumstances, they are very difficult for Chelsea because United don't want to lose to them. So it creates a scenario where I feel Villa will win those two games and will make it into the Champions League. Unai Emery has done wonderfully with this team, and if he doesn't make it into the Champions League, I think it will hurt them a lot. It will hurt him a lot. It will hurt the team a lot. And as you said, the finances will take a hit as well. So I do want them to qualify for the Champions League. I think they will.
Aston Villa Football Club ticking all the right boxes. They need to see out the job. They have 2 more games. Hopefully, they can get that done. Let's take a break on the show. When we come back, we'll bring you our first tactical breakdown of the day between Chelsea and Newcastle Football Club. So let's do a quick turnaround. We'll come back and then we'll get to the tactical board. Back to Scorecard here on Channel 1 TV. Let's now get into our analysis game for the week. And it was Chelsea Football Club taking on Newcastle United. Newcastle and Chelsea both chasing a spot in Europe, and it just reflected in how intense the game was. It ended up with Chelsea striker Nicolas Jackson getting sent off for an elbow situation. Let's get the highlights of that game. When we come back, we'll go to the tactical board. So Bruno Guimaraes putting the icing on the cake for Newcastle Football Club. They are in red hot form. Mr. Graham, what do you have for us on the board?
So first, we'll go through the Tonali goal. So we'll just go through it quickly. So here's the goal. And this is why I feel like the mistake started. When Caicedo gets Gordon there, right? He should forget about Gordon. You see, he's all the way here. Now let me pause here. Look at how far and how much space Tonali is in, because if you're the defenders and you are here, right? There shouldn't be this gap, knowing that you can see the guy running. You would think that
that's a big channel to run
because your left winger is gone, so you should be focused on him. What about look at the midfielders? And we also talk about them too, because look at this Romeo Lavia. He's going this way. Enzo, he's going this way. Why do they have so many people on the ball side? You get what I'm saying? One of them, because even this number 21 is also kind of, sorry, thank you very much. This number 21 is also free. So this kind of breakdown where there's a lack of organization, you're not watching their men,
Yeah.
is why Tonali is so free in the box. So once the ball comes into Tonali, it's a very simple, because look how free he is. Too easy.
Whose job is it to be picking Tonali up? Because typically he doesn't get that. He's not that adventurous a player unless he's probably seen that there's a weakness
You
he
would
can
think
exploit.
that, I would say, between Caicedo, Romeo Lavia, and Enzo Fernandez. Because Enzo Fernandez and Romeo Lavia will see at the double pivots in this game. And then Caicedo, at least, knowing that Anthony Gordon is offside on the ground, one of them should have at least picked him up and made it difficult. Because for me, too big a gap, too easy, no challenge. He didn't even strike it. Look at how he hit the ball. It was very
barely
easy.
struck the ball.
Exactly. So for me, and that's the breakdown we've talked about Chelsea all season, that this disorganization, the defense, this lack of awareness will cause them the Champions League race. And this is another example.
Like Real Madrid defending, no coordination,
So
big
talk about
tunnels
the
in
Bruno
between.
Guimaraes goal here. Let me just get that up.
Yeah.
So this one, I can be a bit more sympathetic to the defenders because look, it was a heavy deflection. But I still have some problems with how they approach this. And let me pause it here. Just pause it here. You see, when Bruno Guimaraes gets the ball here, I felt one of Enzo or Malo Gusto should have closed him down. Because if you look at this gap, this is a big gap. If one of them comes in to close him down, he has a lot less space to decide what to do. I think there was some indecision here. And eventually, Malo Gusto picks up, decides I want to go. And the reason I say this is, look at least, Cole is watching this guy. Correa is watching this guy. I can't quite see that. I think that's maybe Jadon Sancho.
Who is this person?
Jadon Sancho. He's at least watching this guy. Maybe, okay, you can say this guy is free. But even, I believe that's number 20. That might be Lavia or Caicedo. One of them is already there. So there's enough people in there for you to think that why is Bruno Guimaraes so free? So now he tries to go. And you see, he's
acres of space.
Acres of space. So by the time he tries to get close and put his leg in, Guimaraes can shoot the ball.
It took 3 touches.
And it hits your leg and goes
enough
over.
time to make a sandwich.
So even though he was able to get the block in there, he couldn't come fast enough. He couldn't close the space.
The shot had already been taken.
The shot had already been taken. And once the shot is taken and reaches some velocity and goes up, because if you are a lot closer, if you are like me and you right here, and take the shot, it goes back down. But when you are this far and the shot has some velocity, hits your shin and goes over. Very easy goal. So
talk to me, Edwin, about how you felt about Chelsea's temperament going into this game. They knew this was obviously going to be complicated. They knew that their season sort of rides on this, but it didn't seem to me like there was any fight in them from the beginning.
Look, to talk about Chelsea, I need to talk about Newcastle's rise.
Okay.
Newcastle used to be a team where when they are facing a top 6 team, you think, oh, they are going to give a challenge. They are going to be a difficult team to play against, but they are ultimately not going to be up for the fight. Now, Chelsea have become that team. Newcastle have become that team where they go into the game where they are the dominant one, they are the big side, they are the one everyone expects. Chelsea have become a team where they go into a game, you think, oh, they might give a challenge, but are they really going to...
Do they have enough to get over the hump?
Yeah, and that's how it's been for every single big game that Chelsea have played this season. In the big games, they haven't been able to challenge enough the big teams to get the result.
I think that's a very important point you are making, because not to even cut you, just make that point. One of the hallmarks of the Abramovich era was the fact that Chelsea fans knew that, I mean, look, worst case scenario in the season, they would win big games. Like, they would end up with a trophy.
A good example is Drogba versus Arsenal. You knew that if Drogba plays against Arsenal, Drogba can score 5 goals
exactly.
But home and away,
but
he's
now
scoring against
it's
Arsenal.
like they are winning all the other games and dropping points with the big games. Please finish.
And if you go into big games with big teams and you can't win a single one or you don't challenge enough, once you go away from home, it becomes even more daunting. And especially when there's something to play for, like a Champions League spot or to play for a title or whatever it is. If you go away from home, the pressure intensifies, it increases, because you know that if you lose, you are going to miss out on something, and the likelihood is that you might lose. Then the players go under pressure, they start jumping into tackles like Nicholas Jackson did.
That was very unlikely.
Exactly, and they start missing chances like Reece James did, which should have been an easy chance to get on target. So that's pressure. It goes around the team. Every player feels it. Even the manager starts to feel it at a point, and he starts making errors with his changes, his substitutions, his tweaks. He makes errors when he shouldn't do so, and I think it's affected Chelsea all season. There are 2 games to play for, 2 finals, as a lot of coaches will say, against Manchester United and against Nottingham Forest. 2 matches that, honestly,
season-defining matches
should be winnable for Chelsea, given the form of the other teams. United should be very winnable. Nottingham Forest are not in the best of form. You would think that Chelsea would win both games, but the repercussions of not winning those games, it makes it difficult to root for Chelsea.
And they don't have Nicolas Jackson for those games as well.
For either of those games. Cole Palmer his form is very patchy. You don't have that player that you can look to and say, this is going to be Chelsea's game winner. This is going to be the player who carries them through these 2 games. So it's a bit of a worry. But you look collectively around the squad, they have a lot of good players. A lot of good players.
Ideally, they should have the quality
have the quality to get through these games. So it's a bit worrying, but I still think Chelsea do have the quality.
I just want to talk about Nicolas Jackson for a second. Look, last week, I believe against Everton, he won them the game.
Yes, he won.
That was a very good goal. And when you are the lead striker, we've seen how Chelsea have struggled to create chances without him. What he did was a moment of madness. It was senseless. It was immature. It was silly. And now it's not even like you are in a situation where you will play the next match, or at least maybe you miss one and you play. You are done for the season because violent conduct. That's
it's a wrap.
2-3 games. You are done for the season. You might even miss the first game of next season. And they need you at this key stage. They need you going into these games because that Nottingham Forest game, you've made it 10 times harder, knowing how Nottingham Forest play, how they would like to sit deep, have you hit them and that kind of stuff. You've made it 10 times harder. So for me, I think Nicolas Jackson, he should hold his head in shame. And despite all the things that have happened this season, I know we've spoken about the defense, we've spoken about the goalkeeping, but I'll say Nicolas Jackson, if they don't qualify for the Champions League, he should bear ultimate responsibility. Despite a lot of the bad things that happen.
That's a big boulder to get.
I'll say it because at this point, you were still in the race. People were dropping points. You still had all the chance in the world. You know that there's not a suitable backup. Look, what has what's that guy's name called? Christopher Nkunku done this season. I can't even remember his name. I can't remember his name anymore because what has he done? No, seriously. If you are a Chelsea fan, Edwin, you tell me right now. If you are hearing that Nkunku is going to start those games, are you happy? Look, do you even think Nkunku will start based on his form? There's even a possibility he might not even start.
That's fine. He's not pulled his weight in games, but I think the manager has not been fair to a lot of Chelsea's French players as well. It started with Joao Felix, playing him consistently in the Conference League, not enough in the Premier League, not giving him enough of a chance in the Premier League. It's the same for Nkunku. He was not giving enough of a chance.
I'll just stop it. I don't think Joao Felix's issue is that he hasn't been given enough chance. His issue is he's not good, but maybe Nkunku.
I think a lot. He didn't trust Chelsea's French players enough. So when going into the season, he needed to make changes and bring players on who were ready to fight. Those players
I agree with you. He started off the season by isolating certain points and said, I don't need you guys, go train with the reserve team. And then when you needed to call on them, you can't. There's no trust.
And to be fair to Nkunku was their top scorer at a certain point in the season because in the Conference League, he was scoring a lot, but he wasn't getting any chances in the Premier League. But for me, I felt when he did get a chance in the Premier League, he just didn't pull his weight.
True.
And I think also his nonchalant demeanor when he was playing too. You have Nicolas Jackson is a fighter. I mean, this is the bad side of the fighting when you're a bit too aggressive. But I think in Nkunku, the way he's played and the attitude he's shown, if you were a Chelsea manager, would you want to play someone whose attitude is so poor? I think let's be also fair to Maresca that the attitude that Nkunku has shown is not someone who's serious about the football he wants to play, in my opinion.
Well, looks like the Chelsea situation has a lot of arms and legs. I know one thing that keeps everybody quiet: results and wins. If they can get those results and they can get into the Champions League, all the noise will probably die down. So Nicolas Jackson has put his team in a tight situation. But let's go on and get more highlights. This time, let's get to the camp of Manchester United. They are losing for fun in the league. It looks like they've checked out of the league as far as it's concerned. They are concentrated purely on Europe. And Kudus Mohammed and West Ham United feasted on this particular opportunity. stone that was rejected by United came back to be a very significant cornerstone in this game. Let me start with you, Edwin, on this one. I've been disgusted by United's form, and I've gotten tired of the excuses that have been made for the manager. I don't think that any manager should be this bad, regardless of which team you inherited. When I watch Amorim, he doesn't make in-game changes. He can't seem to react to his players. I mean, low morale. He's doing nothing on the sideline.
I just want to give some stats before Edwin goes. 25 games in the league for Amorim. 6 wins, 6 losses, 13 defeats. 6 wins, 6 draws, and 13 defeats.
13 defeats.
Yeah, that's more than 50%. Edwin, please continue.
Look, if United qualify to the Champions League by winning the Europa League, I think a lot of people will forget about this phase of their season. If they don't qualify to the Champions League by winning the Europa League, this will be a horrendous season for United. To not win a title and to finish, currently they are 17th or 16th or 17th in the table. And to finish where they are, it will be a terrible season. And you can't talk about Amorim and say that he's not had an impact on the team. He's not had enough time to have an impact on the team. He's coached 25 matches in the league. That is enough time to at least get your team playing a certain way. That's more than half. So where they are in the table is completely down to him.
They scored 42 goals and conceded 53.
And do you remember they were 4 points off fourth when he took over?
It's ridiculous.
And last season, right? Last season, they finished with a goal difference of -1. This season looks like it's way worse.
It definitely looks like it. And while I sympathize with him, and I'm a very big believer in the impact of preseason and preseason matches, but when you coach 25 matches, it gives you more time to adjust things in a way where your team isn't so ridiculously bad. They'll start pointing at the Europa League and saying we are focusing on that. But if you are United, you don't lose this number of matches at Old Trafford. In 12 matches, they've conceded the first goal in 12 matches this season. That's poor from United.
I believe this was West Ham's first win at Old Trafford in 16 years.
In 16 years.
The last person to score a winner for West Ham at Old Trafford was Carlos Tevez.
Look, there's very
I don't even know what to say to that.
There's very little improvement in the squad. You look at the number of shots faced, they are in the league with the relegated teams. The number of big chances created, they are in the league with the relegated teams. The number of goals conceded, they are in the league with the relegated teams. So the league position is...
This is relegation form.
It's relegation
They are only lucky
form.
the teams below them are worse off than them.
Someone said if Amorim had come earlier, or if he started the season, United would be relegated. And I believe them. I believe them because that's the kind of form they are in. And if you are a United fan, I'm sure you'll be elated if they win the Europa League. But you've got to look at these performances by Manchester United at Old Trafford and think we are bigger than this. We may have a cup coming up. We may have a competition that we can win a trophy in. But we can't allow ourselves to be beaten by West Ham at home. West Ham who have been horrible all season.
Yeah. West Ham hadn't, I believe before this game, they hadn't won in like 6 or 8 matches. 8 matches. They had gone on an 8th game unbeaten run. They run into United at Old Trafford and they get a good win.
So whatever happens in the Europa League, I think that honestly, I was a believer of Amorim at United and he may turn things around next season. But whatever happens at the end of the season, if I were in charge of United, he goes. He's out of the club.
That's a very strong point to make.
You see, I disagree with Edwin.
On which one?
On the fact that you should leave at the end of the season. I believe once you bring someone mid-season and things don't pick up the way you
Not
want
mid-season. That's why I made the point.
This was before mid-season.
When I say mid-season, I'm using mid-season loosely.
Okay.
Because even if you come after the first game of the season, I'll say mid-season.
Which is fair.
But I feel like you owe it to the person to give them a full preseason and maybe the first quarter of the next season to see how it goes. That's how I see these things. I understand where Adrian is coming from because performance-wise,
I was just about to ask that if you are Barada and you are Jim Ratcliffe, you'd be worried because you are asking yourself that, is this guy really telling us that he can only perform if we provide him with the exact personnel he wants. Because at this point, that's what it's looking like.
Exactly.
He can't seem to coach.
But
he's waiting to buy players to fix his problem.
But the truth is, the more I think about it, the more I feel like if they don't win the Europa League, he won't last until the end of next season. Because if they don't win the Europa League, they don't get into the Champions League.
Yep.
And without that financial muscle and that Champions League draw, it might be a lot harder to recruit players. And there's also the factor that the prize money for finishing 16th is a lot less than the prize money for finishing second.
Way less.
So all of those things combined mean that it's going to be a very difficult summer if he doesn't win the Europa League. And that difficult summer means that maybe if he wants 6 players, they might say you can only get 3. Maybe of those 6 players he wants, maybe he wants, let's just use some names. I'm just using an example. You say, oh, I want Vinicius. Oh, I want Pedri. I'm not saying these are players to actually get. So
Gyökeres.
or Gyökeres. Let's just use them as examples. But they say, oh, we don't have Vinicius money. Go and take Serge Gnabry. Oh, we don't have Pedri money. Go and take Adam Watson from Crystal Palace. It's just to give an idea that you are going to get a downgrade on what you want. And then when those players don't meet expectations, what are we going to say? The board didn't back him. This.
It's
but at the end of the day,
like
you have created your own issue. And the one thing I'll say, and I reject forcefully, is when Man United fans say, oh, we've had a better season than someone like Arsenal or Chelsea, who might not, let me not even say Arsenal or whoever, Newcastle,
who are not in a cup final.
Who are not a cup final, who don't win a trophy. I'm sorry. Winning the Europa League does not mean you had a better season. It means that maybe your season wasn't as bad. It's the same as finishing, for me, if you win the Europa League, it moves you up to finishing 7th and not winning a trophy. That's how bad being where they are in the table is. I think that this whole trophies masters is why they kept Ten Hag last season. And I said it before, Ten Hag should have gone. He should have gone, but everyone said, okay, he's won a trophy, so let's give him a chance.
This is like paper over the cracks again. Same thing.
And this is exactly what's going to happen. But I would say in Ten Hag's case, Ten Hag has had 2 full seasons. So you regressing from 3rd to 8th in your second full season after buying players you want is very different from Ten Hag coming to meet a team that was around 8th or 7th when they sacked Ten Hag and dropping them down.
Top 4.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. For me, his league performance has been shambolic. In fact, he and Graham Potter, to be honest, both of them, if we're being honest, he should probably sack them. But they are lucky that they have the excuse that, oh, I don't have my players.
I didn't start the season. I didn't do preseason.
For me, look, if Ten Hag is not near the top 4 by December, right? He's not near the top 4. I think if United are...
You mean Amorim?
Amorim, sorry. I think United should make a decision around that time that if by December, you're not maybe within 6 points of top 4, you should go.
But would they want their season to regress that far again? They've had that under Ole, had that under Ten Hag. Would they want their season to regress to a point where they need to make a change midway through the season again?
What if Ten Hag is 14th by December?
You mean Amorim
again?
I keep saying Ten Hag. What if Amorim is 14th at that point next season, right? Let's just do a thought experiment. And you're thinking, and you're maybe only 6 points above the relegation zone. Are you going to let him go and before the slide starts and you think that, hey, now we are going and hire Big Sam or what? Is that where United are going to go? No, let's.
These are genuine questions.
You have to have the standard that look. We gave you the.
We have a cut-off
We
point.
saw what you did last season. It was horrendous.
We
said, okay, you don't have preseason. We've given you preseason. We've given you some of the players you wanted, and you're still serving us this rubbish.
You need to go.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So for me, and the thing is, there's a good coach in there because clearly we've seen what he's doing in Europe, but there's a disconnect between what's happening in Europe and what's happening in the Premier League.
I think that needs a whole thesis because they've literally just breezed through Europe
they're the only team to play European football
and they are struggling in the domestic league. It doesn't even make any sense. Let's take our second break here on the show. When we come back, we have one more Premier League game for you. We have some Serie A action and then El Clasico in the mix as well. Let's get that break. We'll come back and then we'll continue. Welcome back to Scorecard here on Channel 1 TV. I will be reading a few messages in a bit, but let's take one more highlight and then I'll get to the message box. Arsenal Football Club are having an ultimate meltdown of a season. Dumped out of the Champions League in painful fashion by PSG. They are looking at their second spot, also slipping away, possibly if they don't get their act together. They were up against champions Liverpool today. Liverpool went up by 2 goals. Arsenal managed to rescue a point, but still suffered a red card on the way. Let's get the highlights of that game. I believe that despite getting a second yellow for that. He could have actually been given a straight red for that tackle. That was very dangerous play. Double-footed scissor challenge. I'm not sure what that was all about, but they now have to play their next 2 matches without the guy who's been playing makeshift strike. And he's done a pretty good job at it for somebody who is not a striker. Arsenal look like they are in major trouble to finish the season.
Yes, but I still believe they'll get their Champions League place. I have to assume. Maybe I might be wrong, but I have to assume that they will beat Southampton the last day.
Remember the last time Arsenal needed to beat Southampton?
I mentioned this. I mentioned this on Premier League preview. Actually, it was a Friday night game.
By the 20th minute, they were down by 3 goals.
It was 2.
Yeah.
And then they tried and came back and then
ended up 3-3 or something.
I think Ramsdale and Partey had a bad game that day. Ramsdale had a bad game. Yeah, I remember. But look, I just have to assume that they'll beat Southampton. I think. Look, it's the logical thing to assume. Like I get where you're coming from. History will repeat itself, but it's a logical thing to assume. But Southampton has showed this weekend they are fighters. They're not going to make it easy.
They're not going to have Ramsdale in goal.
Oh yeah, Ramsdale is camp. No, Ramsdale. They sold him. Was he on loan?
No, he's on loan.
No, he's on loan.
Oh, they're in camp.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, then fair enough. Maybe that will help me. But look, I think credit to Arsenal for their fight back. You know, we have to give them credit. Liverpool took a 2-goal lead. Yeah. If they were, it would have been very easy for their heads to drop. Not, feel like we've lost this game. Yeah. We've lost the title, but they showed that look, they're not as bad as people are making them out to be. They fought back. They showed some spirit, but at the end of the day, just another disappointing result, and just shows the disappointments that have happened all season, because both goals they could say were quite sloppy for me, especially the Gakpo goal. I mean, it wasn't for a team that's known for their defensive solidity. Those are not goals you should be conceding. But credit to them for fighting back, of course, and another tame end to the season, considering the last 2 seasons, is very painful. But look, like we've said, all agree. I think Mikel Arteta is in his last chance saloon, really. I think next season, if he doesn't win...
He says the project enters phase 5 next season.
Look, for me, if he doesn't win the league or the Champions League, they should sack him. Maybe if he wins the FA Cup or the Carabao Cup, some people might be like, okay, he's won a trophy. Maybe there's more trophies to come back. For the amount of money they spent, how close they've come, and the talent they have. And to be fair, the smart coaching I have seen from Arteta, this is a team that should win the league or Champions League next season. Or I don't think he's ever going to do it.
Very briefly on Liverpool, I feel really bad how things are going getting to the end of the season. I think they've been really superb up until this point. But there are a few people who are creating a narrative that they are one of the worst league winners in recent years because of the points. Usually we see 90, we see, especially in the last 80s. We see the high 80s, but they are 82 and they've been 82 at least for the last
2 weeks.
Because
they will now. I think they've got now 83.
83, and that narrative doesn't suit me because they've been by far the best team in the league. They only lost to Nottingham Forest until the loss to Chelsea.
Fulham.
Until the loss to Fulham.
So it was 2 points. So two losses the whole season.
Exactly,
basically.
And I think that with the way the season is petering out, and obviously they've won the title, nothing to play for, but I think it does a little bit to the legacy of this trophy, the legacy of Arne Slot, that it's petering out so badly. And
so people are going to look at the table and say, look at these people.
How did this team win the league? They were not special.
People look at Alex Ferguson's league winning sides and the points they were winning with. I think that, like I said, to me, it's really much ado about nothing. It's people trying to look for trouble where there's no trouble. Everybody had the same start to the campaign. Nobody told you not to pick up a good winning run. They picked up their run at a good time and then fell off probably when...
They fell off after they won the
Exactly.
So the narrative is that City had a bad season, Arsenal had a good season, Chelsea...
The good point of
those
defense,
are all true, but Liverpool have had an excellent season.
And Liverpool have beaten most of their title rivals this season as well. So it's not like one of those seasons where
Arsenal
you played...
say they didn't beat us, so...
Well, that's fair, but now they are still battling for their lives. Let's see how that goes. But let me read a few messages and then we'll change direction a bit. This one's from Blade from Amasaman. He says, kindly tell coach that if he wants to win the Europa, Man United should allow us to beat them Woto this coming Friday. So both Chelsea and United can play the Champions League next season. Or be stubborn against us and lose in the final. They can choose one. This one here says from Felix from Inswatre in the Bono region says, I'm a Man United fan, but today's result is getting me worried because Spurs is an English team and we are meeting them in the final. From the look of things, it's obvious we are still learning how to play English football. This one's from Kweku from La Paz. Says, Arsenal's style of play is so disappointing. They always indulge in making so many unnecessary passes in their opponent's goal mouth without shooting a goal. Football is about goals. I don't know who taught them that style of play. I think there was a lot of that today as well. The fans were literally shouting at the players to shoot at a point. It was that bad. This one here from Barrister PSA Gura. Okay, he says he's a sports host at Rock 97 FM. Shout outs to you. He says, I hope you remember I messaged last week that Barca will beat Real Madrid again to make it 5 wins this year. There is nothing as sweet as beating your eternal rivals 5 consecutive times in a season with few additions and good management. This Barca team will achieve the treble we failed to achieve this season.
Isn't it 4 wins?
Yes, 4.
It's 4 actually. So I believe 2 domestic Classicos, the Copa del Rey final and the Super Copa. So 4 of that. He says he's watching with his wife Juliet Gura from Aguna Swedo. Big shout outs to. He says Happy Mother's Day to her. Okay, so I'm sure all of you here. Big shout outs to you guys as well. One more message. Ken Inside Adenta says, I have watched the last 2 El Clasicos. I think Barca should be the ones complaining about refereeing decisions. Today too, the referees helped Real Madrid, but it was still not enough. Anyway, on that refereeing Clásico note, let's get the highlights of that game. So not even an Mbappe hat-trick could save Real Madrid. Edwin, at this point, is it mental? I mean, by the time this game was played, did Barca have a mental edge over Real Madrid because of just how many times they had beaten them?
There was a mental aspect to it. When Barcelona won the Copa del Rey, someone asked me what happened. It will happen in this game, and I told them Barcelona will win it again by a high scoreline. It wasn't a high scoreline, but it definitely scored a lot of goals. One thing that
scored at least 3 goals against Real in every
single game they played this season, and there's one thing that I think is responsible for this. In 3 of those 4 Clásicos, Barcelona have had the same defense throughout in 3 of those 4. The defense of Balde, of Kubasi, of Martinez, and of Koundé. So 3 of those 4. For Real Madrid, they've changed every single Clásico. And it's not their fault. Injuries, suspensions, all that comes into play. But when your defense is so unsettled, it doesn't matter who is in goal, whether it's Courtois, whether it's Oblak, whether it's Alisson. You are not going to have the same level of defensive chemistry that's needed to take on a team as strong offensively as Barcelona. And it's affected Real Madrid throughout in every single Clásico. They chop and change. There's no stability. So Barcelona are able, they have stability up front. Whether it's Lamine, you are going to have Lamine in there, you're going to have Rafinha. If it's not Lewandowski, it's always Torres. The changes are very minimal. So they have built some chemistry in that attack. And when your defense is now starting to build that chemistry, it's not going to happen.
Times they had to draft Tchouaméni into the defense. And then bring in the youngster from the Cantera. Asensio to come and complement him. Crazy.
You are not going to succeed that way. And Barcelona have been dominant throughout. They are going to win the league, obviously. It's going to be a league and cup double. They wanted to make it a treble, but unfortunately, Inter stood in their way.
God is good. Anyway, finish for me on the Clásico note.
Like we all thought Barca were the favorites going to. We all thought they put pressure on Madrid. Madrid scored 2 early goals. I think, could Madrid really do it? I thought that maybe there was some hope. I thought that, and then by the time I was looking away, I looked at my phone, checked again. It's 2-2, and I'm thinking to myself, these guys, they are not serious about what they want to do. And you're watching the highlights and you're seeing the kind of sloppy mistakes Madrid are making. For such an experienced team compared to the Barcelona team, they shouldn't be making some of these mistakes. They shouldn't be sleeping on their job like that. So, very disappointing performances all around. And we are hearing that Xabi Alonso is coming in. And for me, I'm a bit worried. Because if you have so few defenders, that 3 at the back system you want to play, how are you going to manage it? Is he going to be able to change the system and play something different? It will have to be
a bumper harvest in the defense market for Real Madrid. And if you know Real Madrid's history, they never ever go into the transfer market looking to buy defenders.
Maybe they should buy Jonathan Tah. His contract is expiring with Leverkusen. He knows Alonso's style. He comes in as an extra centre back. That's the only sign I can think of. Because I'm thinking about Trent Alexander-Arnold. You have a team
in a wing-back system.
I feel that might be better for him.
Yeah, definitely.
I think either right wing back or right centre back, because in the right centre back, he can step into midfield, he can push forward when he needs to. Because if you look at a team like Inter Milan, their centre backs can push forward, play deep crosses, do different things. So I think Trent, the 3-back, will suit him a lot. Slower pace of La Liga will allow him to spray the ball better.
Yeah.
But I'm worried about the day they face Barcelona. What is going to happen to him on those days? But I think most of the time it will be fine. But I don't think Madrid is suited for a 3-back system, considering the amount of attacking talent they have.
It sounds very funny off the get for me.
I just feel like this is a team that overloads the attacking areas in terms of talent. So 3-back is a bit of a waste. So
it's about to be very interesting in the next couple of months. Let's finish off with the Serie A. Let's just do back-to-back highlights of the contenders. So Napoli played out a draw. Inter Milan, Napoli drew 1-1 with Genoa. Inter beat Torino by 2-0. So let's get the highlights of that. So the Serie A race is well and alive. 2-2 Napoli and Genoa. It's 1 point separating Napoli at the top and Inter Milan right behind them. Let me just take 10 seconds of thoughts. How does that one end? That title is still alive.
I think Napoli wins.
Napoli wins.
Yeah, Napoli.
2 more games left, right?
Their games are easier. That's the thing. They still have easier games, but that shake against this shaky results makes me wonder. But I still think Napoli have the easier game, so I'm watching them.
Thank you very much, Susu. Thank you very much, Edwin. And thanks to all of you who sent us messages tonight on the show. I am Benjamin Nketia. Same time next week, Scorecard will be back on your screen.